Oh man, what a thoroughly entertaining, enjoyable, and enlightening treatise about the post recession economy. Man, this is one of the finest nonfiction works I've ever read about the nature of classism in American society. I mean, sure, it's riddled with grammatical errors, but I mean, come on. This thing is just fantastic. Oh, hey, what's going on? Didn't quite see you there. Today, I want to talk about something that is not related to this fine, outstanding, amazing work of literature, but instead something completely different. And that's a band that is really idolized by people the world over. They're one of the most celebrated rock and roll bands in history, and honestly, I think they're a bit overrated. In fact, I think they may in fact be the single most overrated band in history not named the Beatles. And the name of this group is Led Zeppelin. Now, before we start talking about Led Zeppelin, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of ground on this one. I'm going to concede a few things. First off, I think the guys in Led Zeppelin are absolutely fantastic musicians. There's no denying that. Jimmy Page, he is a virtuoso if there ever was one. John Paul Jones, he could play the bass. Robert Plant could communicate with bats with his voice. John Bonham, fantastic drummer. There's no denying, technically these guys were excellent in what they did. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily think there was a translation from them having great musical ability to their ability to make actually decent music. And there has been a fantastic article written by some mysterious and probably handsome stranger that I've attached right there at the bottom of the video that gives you a little more background on perhaps why Led Zeppelin is an overrated and not all that great band. So anyway, I'm kind of run down 5 reasons why I think Led Zeppelin is not as great as perhaps everyone else considers them to be. To begin, let's talk about their discography. Okay, 2 things. Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 4, solid records. Personally, I'm not a huge fan, but even I can admit, there's some really solid tracks on there. From start to finish, they are better than average. Now, here's the thing about Led Zeppelin's discography otherwise. Beyond Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 4, their entire milieu is pretty much a jumbled bag of mediocre to just plain awful. Led Zeppelin 1, I think there's really not a whole lot of interesting stuff on there. They're still trying to kind of get their sound, and more on the content of that later on. Led Zeppelin 3 is an utterly unremarkable album outside of the Immigrant Song. And yeah, Physical Graffiti, Houses of the Holy, I think are both incredibly overlong, pretentious sounds of a band that's trying to experiment that really has no ideas. And then you get into their last couple albums. You get into stuff like Presence, In Through the Outdoor, and Coda. Even the most hardcore Led Zeppelin fans generally admit those albums are absolutely atrocious. And then there's The Song Remains the Same. Trust me, the less said about that train wreck, the better. So anyway, with all that in mind, you look at their discography, they have 2 good albums out of like what, 9, 10? That's a pretty bad ratio. It's like 20% decent material and 80% filler. And I think that's kind of something to take into consideration when you look at their contemporary bands. Bands like Black Sabbath, who were releasing 6 great albums one after another. The Ramones doing 4 or 5 great albums one after another. The Stooges, 3 great albums in a row. Motorhead, 4 great albums in a row. These are all bands that were kind of around the same time Led Zeppelin was doing stuff, and they didn't really have sort of a down point. They have a generally enjoyable milieu, and I think their overall legacy should be perhaps vaunted a little bit higher than Led Zeppelin. But you know what? I could be wrong. That's just my personal opinion. Reason number 2. Some of their music was just needlessly grandiose and pretentious. Okay, I'm going to give you some numbers here. Led Zeppelin had 21 studio tracks, released over their career, that went on for more than 6 minutes. That's pretty stupid. In fact, they actually had 3 that were over 10 minutes long, which I think is kind of a celebration in excess. And of course, you have The Song Remains the Same. That's an album that had 9 tracks. 6 of them went on for longer than 8 minutes. And in fact, there's actually a cover of Dazed Confused that went on for half an hour. That's not really music. That's just people forgetting to turn off their equipment. There's no need to have something that long and overbearing, really. I mean, that's what it is. It's just extravagant for the sake of being extravagant. It's not great music. And I think perhaps I could forgive the band to some capacity if some of these longer songs were great. If everything they did that was really lengthy was on par with Stairway to Heaven or Kashmir. But it's not. It's stuff like In My Time of Dying, Keely's Last Stand, Carousel, stuff that's not exactly the best material released by the band. And I think more often than not, that's the case, and not their more outstanding material. And then, of course, there's the fact that the band tried to get experimental with the physical graffiti in Houses of the Holy, and they had some really, really bad attempts to replicate the music of James Brown and Bob Marley and Stevie Wonder, and they're just bad. If you've never heard Dire Maker, it's bad. If you've never heard The Crunge, it's bad. These are all the sounds of a bunch of really boring, bland, pasty white guys trying to be black, and as always, it falters. And more on their inspiration from the African American community later on. But first, reason number 3 why I think Led Zeppelin's overrated. Their lyrics were stupid. If you look at their overall milieu, their discography, what they built, they basically only had 4 types of songs, right? They had ramble-on songs where it was a guy who's leaving his woman to go do stuff elsewhere, like going to California, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Very generic, very folksy, very Robert Johnson-esque. Okay, that's one type of song they did. The other type of song they did were the really blunt, metaphorical songs about procreation, like Whole Lot of Love and the Women song, which really are just childish and kind of embarrassing when you look back on it. Okay, then you have the songs they attempt to sound like a blues artist, basically anything off Led Zeppelin 1. And then, of course, you have their J.R.R. Tolkien occultist stuff like Stairway to Heaven and Kashmir, where it's about elves and dwarves and a bunch of other stuff that really doesn't matter. No, anyway, I'm saying that, not that that's necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, it's just that all of their songs covered the exact same territory. They never got experimental. I mean, compare what Led Zeppelin was doing overall to what Black Sabbath was doing on Paranoid. I mean, that one album alone had songs about Vietnam, bipolar disorder, intergalactic travel, heroin abuse, nuclear war. I mean, all this stuff on one album, and Led Zeppelin basically did the same 4 songs over and over again their entire career. That's a little poopy, if you ask me. But like I said, that's just my opinion. But now we move on from things that are just my opinion personally to things that are completely indisputable. Okay, this is the big one. This is probably my second biggest slide against Led Zeppelin as a whole. There's no way around it, even if you love them. They were unabashed plagiarists. Absolutely shameless. In fact, you go back and listen to Led Zeppelin 1, there are 6 songs, I think. Yes, 6 songs on there that are complete and blatant swaps of the material of other artists. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You and Days Confused are both unacknowledged cover tunes. You got tracks like Black Mountainside, which is a ripoff of Black Waterside by Jake Holmes. How Many More Times, a ripoff of How Many More Years by Howling Wolf. Communication Breakdown, lyrically that's stolen from Eddie Cochran's Nervous Breakdown. And then you got Your Time Is Gonna Come, which was ripped off from Traffic's Dear Mr. Fantasy. So this is their very first work as an artist, and it's just absolute unabashed plagiarism from start to finish. And you know what? This is a band that didn't really evolve. They actually kind of got better and more reliant upon ripping off the music of others as their career dragged along. Okay, obviously with Led Zeppelin 2, you had Whole Lot of Love, which was an absolutely shameless swap of Willie Dixon's You Need Love, and Lemon Song, which was a complete and utter ripoff of Killing Floor by Howling Wolf, and they had the whole legal battles about that. So it's not me saying they're plagiarists because it's my opinion. It's me saying that because that's what we found out in a court of law. That's just the way it is. Some other songs by Led Zeppelin which are clearly inspired by previous works to the point of plagiarism. Stuff like Moby Dick and Bring It On Home rips off of What's Your Step by Bobby Parker and Bring It On Home by Sonny Boy Williamson. So it's not even like they're being subtle about it. It's not they're just like ripping off songs and coming up with crazy names. I mean, they're just literally changing one word in the title and passing it off as their original material, and they've made a career out of that. Other stuff they've done, In My Time of Dying, When the Levee Breaks, all rip-offs. Since I've Been Loving You, rip-off of Moby Grape's Never. Hats Off to Roy Harper is a rip-off of the Shake 'Em On Down song, Buka White. And of course, the big one, Stairway to Heaven, far and away Led Zeppelin's most popular song. I want you to go on YouTube after this video, I want you to type in Spirit Taurus. Give it a listen. Listen to Stairway to Heaven. By the way, Taurus came out first. All you need to know. You ever heard that story about Jimmy Page, how he allegedly wrote Stairway to Heaven? Like he was like saying black magic into a portal in some haunted room, and some demon came out of a mirror and gave him the lyrics. Apparently that demon was playing New Age music. So anyway, all that to get down to my reason why I really, really don't like Led Zeppelin. They write overlong songs, their lyrics are stupid and repetitive, they're plagiarists. All these are really reasons that are good enough, if you ask me, to not like them as musicians as a whole. But I think really the reason why I absolutely detest them is because they're absolutely horrible human beings. This is a band that has done things that are not just unsavory, they are absolutely illegal, and they've gotten away with it. And I think a lot of Led Zeppelin fans have kind of turned a blind eye to some of their criminalistic, hedonistic excesses of their favorite band. I think that's a horrible thing. First off, you've heard the Mud Shark story a million times, right? Beating the groupies. Well, there's some other things perhaps you didn't know about Led Zeppelin. Like, did you know that Jimmy Page, probably the most celebrated guitarist alive today, once got his manager to kidnap a 14-year-old girl for the use of sexual trust? Jimmy Page is a pedophile, an unabashed sexual criminal, a victimizer of children. This man is not someone that should be celebrated. He should not be idolized as some guitar hero. He should be in a jail for the rest of his life for the crimes he's committed against children. But so what? Who cares? You run around with your little Zoso shirt on. Ooh, I don't care. They're great. They rock and roll. They also are child abusers. But who cares, right? They make great music. You're a fan. You can turn the blind eye to everything. Go ahead. Overlook that. Overlook the fact that the band tried to gang rape journalist Ellen Sander one time. Overlook all the stuff John Bonham did where he was trying to sodomize stewardesses. The time he punched down a woman in L.A. Or the time he teamed up with a gangster and nearly murdered a security guard in San Francisco. These are people which are not admirable. They're downright sociopathic. They're criminal. But because they can play good music, we give them a free pass, which I think is one of the biggest slights I have against Western culture as a whole. We take our heroes seriously. So seriously to the point that we don't criticize them and we allow them to get away with things that are absolutely disgusting, depraved, and unjustifiable. Led Zeppelin fans, you're guilty of this. So anyway, what more can I say about Led Zeppelin? Plagiarists, sex criminals, they write stupid lyrics, they're long for the sake of being long. Their overall discography is more filler than decency. I don't know, they're just an overrated band. They're overrated people. Actually, they're horrible human beings. And if you like them, you're wrong. Have a nice day.